Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. Today, I'm very excited because we have a very special guest on our show today. Her name is Jenny Powers, and she is an author, and she came out with a book recently, and it talks about the evolving into, the species that we are today, and how we could look at who we were back then and who we are now, and how we could actually focus on the root cause of what really keeps us healthy. How has all the different things in life that we do affected our mental health, our physical health, and what we need to do in order to establish good health and longevity in our lives? Because a lot of the things we do, we don't realize how much it affects us. And she's here to explain, what her book's about and why it's so important to figure out what the root cause is and how to go about fixing your body and really giving your body what it actually needs. So, Jenny, I am so excited to have you on the show today. I'm so glad you came. I was looking at all your materials and I was looking at your book, and I was so excited because this is something that, people have not really, they talk about it, but we really need to go more in depth so people have a clear understanding of the things that we put in our body have a major impact on everything. They have a major impact on our mental health, physical health,
Mhm.
spiritual well-being, our clarity, the way we think, our moods, everything. And even our composition of our bodies, how we look, everything that goes in our body really can change your body tremendously. And, it's all about, certain components that we're going to go over that can really make a huge impact on your overall health and longevity. So tell us a little about yourself, first of all, and what you do.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. So I'm Jenny Powers, like you said. I am a PhD scientist in immunology. And kind of as my history, how did I get to writing this book about health and wellness? Well, I had always kind of been this achiever of I'm an athlete, I have a PhD, and I always probably through conditioning from our culture and society, my worth was completely tied up with my achievements, what I did, what I accomplished. Um, and so even though I had, a really great on the outside, it looked like I had everything. I had this research job and I have all this stuff, but I was really miserable on the inside because I just felt like I couldn't do it. I was burned out, I was stressed out, I was depressed, and to make matters worse, I sort of started blaming myself. Like it's my fault. I can't do it. Why can't I succeed? Why can't I thrive in this world? Um, and so when I left academia, I started to heal because a lot of those feelings, and just conditioned thoughts that I was having about my what was going on with me. Um, and so what I started doing spirituality and meditation, and I realized that I really wanted to be a writer. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but for some reason, my psychology was saying, well, writing isn't, you can't be successful as a writer. What can you achieve if you write things? And so I finally was starting to kind of put some of those doubts, out of my mind, and I'm going to be a writer. And funnily enough, I wrote uh children's fiction. That's the first thing that kind of came out of me is children's fiction. And I really loved doing that, and it just continued my healing. And but as writing books doesn't necessarily pay the bills, especially if you're not getting published. And so I was looking for a job, and I found my co-author, Luke Comer. He put an ad out for someone to help research and write this book that he had conceptualized in his mind, over many, many years. And it was about how we are no longer living in accord with our biology. Our environment has changed so much, and it compels us to live in such a way that we don't give our body our evolved needs.
Yeah.
And the more he talked about it, the more excited I got about the idea that, maybe the reason why we're so unhealthy, the reason why I wasn't able to cut it is not because it's my fault. It's because my body, my brain is not, was not, has not evolved to live like that. It was not evolved to work 80 hours a week. My body, I'm eating crap food, and but that's I'm eating food that my body didn't evolve to eat.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like crap. Like crap
Hmm.
food is making me feel like crap.
Yeah.
And so I started like feeling like, okay, this, my health and my struggles aren't my fault.
Right.
But I am now that I understand what's going on, I am responsible for changing it, because you can only really change yourself. You
Yes.
can't, you just change yourself first. You get yourself to the point where you like put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can start helping others.
Hmm.
Um, and so the book, um, like I said, I wrote it. Actually, Luke had 10 different ideas of ways of being that we are out of alignment with.
Hmm.
And so the first four came out in our first book that came out in June, and it's called On the Origin of Being, um, Understanding the Science of Evolution to Enhance Your Quality of Life. And in this book, we talk about this environmental mismatch, how, we evolved when we were, the whole history of the human lineage, all the way back to the beginning of life. Everything kind of evolved with the environment. We evolved in response to the environment.
Hmm.
Um, and so we were able to maintain equilibrium and homeostasis. And suddenly the agricultural revolution happened, and then the industrial revolution happened, and now the information age is happening, and our environment started to change so exponentially in such a short period of time
Yes.
that our ability to adapt physically was we just didn't have the time for our
Yeah.
bodies to adapt physically. So we tried to adapt with our behavior, which is something really cool about human beings, because we are smart and intelligent and creative.
Hmm.
Um, but some of the behaviors, especially now in modern day, that we've come up with as solutions are really the root cause of a lot of the problems that we're having. So it came out in June, and I've just been trying to get the word out there, and to hopefully give people the why. Everyone's hearing about, oh, you need to, just for example, from some of the things in the book, you need to stop getting blue light at night. You need to start eating more whole foods. You need to not work so long. You need to
Yeah.
get out in nature. All of these things that people hear over and over again about how to improve their health and wellness. Well, they're hopefully this book gives them a lot of the why. Like, why do we have circadian rhythms, and why is blue light so important to circadian rhythms?
Yeah.
um why is eating processed food so bad for our bodies?
Right.
Why is we used to we sometimes we think, well, our lives have always been hard, and we've always worked and toiled and had this, just work 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 mentality. But in reality, our hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't work that hard. They enjoyed life a lot more than we do.
Yes.
And then, of course, being in nature, I mean, we're the only species on the planet that doesn't live in our natural habitat and hasn't gone extinct.
Yeah.
So we're getting there.
Hmm.
No. So hopefully, the book, and talking to so many people, and trying to get the word out that there's the reasons behind why our modern world is failing to give us and our bodies what we need. And so if we can maybe learn all that stuff and bring some of these things back, we don't want to go back and live as hunter gatherers, because the modern world is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But if we can kind of pick pick and choose some of the things that work for us and bring them into the modern world, then we can have the best of both.
Oh, definitely. And if, as we were talking earlier, if you go back into the caveman days and you see the structural, structure of the human body, it was so different.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and as time evolved, the human body changed as time evolved. But so did our diets. We didn't eat the way we did back in the caveman days. And as we changed and as we ate and as we discovered more foods and as we changed the way we cooked and then we did things, our bodies started to change along with it. And people don't realize that food, especially, and the way we live life, food, stress, there's a lot of components, but the first one we'll talk about is food. You know, it has a huge impact on our health. If your body doesn't know what it is, it doesn't know how to break it down, and then it stores it. And there's so many foods out there that have so many preservatives, have so many unhealthy artificial ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
have so many ingredients that are addictive to the body that people just crave more and more and more. And you have, you look at physical conditions, you see more mental health issues nowadays. You see more people that diabetes has tripled. You have so many heart disease cases, and you have so many high cholesterol cases, and the,
Mm-hmm.
the list goes on and on and on and on. People have to realize too that, it's the habitat we live in, the way we live. It needs to be changed in order for us to be healthier human beings. You have so many allergies too. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. We never had these allergies when we were
Mm-hmm.
kids. There's like a list long of different types of allergies, but we never had those earlier. Why is that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think what you're talking about, these diseases of modernity, um, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, type 2 diabetes, obesity, all of these things we never used to suffer from. And there's a reason, it's because, as we evolved at the human lineage, nutrition, what we ate and how it provided our bodies and how it um, enable different adaptations to actually stick around and be beneficial is our nutrition. Our nutrition and our evolution are so intricately linked together.
Hmm.
And what's important in the human lineage to know is that, in order to get our big brains, what sets us apart from other animals is our big brains, our intelligence, our creativity, like I said before. But how did we get from, just being another primate to being human beings? And that is the increase in size of our brains. However, our brains are very, very hungry, greedy organs, and so we had to start making changes to the rest of our bodies in order to feed our brains. And so our guts shrank,
Hmm.
because the guts are also energetically costly in the human body. And
Right.
so as our guts shrank and our brains got bigger, we needed to find, like you said, we needed to find new foods in order to support our changing bodies. And
Mhm.
so we needed to find foods that were easier to digest because our guts were shrinking. We needed
Yeah.
something that went quicker into our bloodstream. We needed to find things that had, you know, um, lots of calories, lots of nutrients. And so we used our brains to figure out how to get these foods. So we
Yeah.
started eating more animal products. We started eating a vast array of different kinds of plants. But plants also have defenses. So we had to learn how to process these plants, process this food in order
Yeah.
to make it easily digestible.
Hmm.
So we could feed our bodies and our brains. And so as hunter gatherers, we actually did process food,
Yeah.
which is not the way we do it now. But like we cooked it, we soaked it, we grinded it. There are ways to make these foods easier to digest, and meet the needs of our bodies. But the really key thing is, even though our ancestors processed food, they never stripped away anything from the food. They
Yeah.
always ate the whole food. They ate the skins, the seeds, nuts, for plants. They ate, so that provided all the fiber. They ate,
Hmm.
you know tip to tail of the animal. They ate connective tissue and organ tissue, and they never stripped away fiber or nutrients or vitamins or anything like that. They always ate the whole food.
Right.
um and so I feel like, as technology got more, and as more and more humans were born, and we had large population explosions, we had to learn how to feed those people. And
Yeah.
so we had to change what we ate in order to feed people. And then we realized, oh well, we can take what we ate and grind some, strip them down to like pure sugar and pure oils, and and then we can make new food products to make sure we feed all the hungry people. And so I feel like our instinct to get food that is easier to digest, easy to eat, we way overshot what we needed to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so and because we have costly, our brains are costly and always want more sugar. We have things in place in our biology that when we find sugary, high calorie substances, our bodies are like, let's eat it because we don't know when we're going to see it again.
Hmm.
Right? We got honey, maybe, you know, sweet things were very rare when we were evolving and when we were hunter gatherers. And so, now we live in such abundance and we have sugar all over the place, but our biology is still the same, telling us to keep eating it because our hungry brains need it.
Yeah.
So with the nutrition evolving and our evolving bodies, I mean, hopefully people can understand like where we got to where we are now and some of the reasons why we're having some problems. Um, like for instance, just for me, just reducing the amount of processed foods and eating a lot more whole foods. I
Yes.
feel like I've have reduced the inflammation in my body.
Oh, me too.
My thyroid problems have been going away. My
Yeah.
joints don't hurt. I mean, just really simple, small changes can
Yeah.
really have such a big effect on your
Oh,
body.
100%, 100%. I noticed a huge change when I changed my diet and I started eating whole, healthy foods with lots of nutrients and vitamins in it. And I was eating more plants into my diet and
Mm-hmm.
I cooked differently. My health changed dramatically and I felt better. My stomach felt better. My gut felt better. When I took my blood tests, my thyroids were functioning really well. They weren't sluggish anymore. So, it does play a big role, in your nutrition. And I find
Mm-hmm.
also that sleep also is a big factor too. I feel like, nowadays people are always rush, 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 go, go, go. They're always on their phones, their tablets.
Mm-hmm.
People don't get enough of sleep and people don't realize how vital sleep is and that it's important to get those 8 hours of sleep. And a lot of people don't. They get, a couple hours of sleep and they get up and they go. And that plays a really big toll on your health. Maybe you can go more into that and explain to people.
Yeah. Yeah, so sleep is, like you said, such a huge thing because that is when our bodies repair itself. It's
Hmm.
when we consolidate memories. It's when we, learn things. So there's so many things going on in sleep, um, that is vital for our health. And some people are like, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead," but like if you don't sleep, you're cutting your life short because of all the things that your body needs to do with sleep and that you're depriving it of.
Yeah.
But in the book, what we talk about a lot is circadian rhythms.
Hmm.
And circadian rhythms are so important because um, they actually help time the functions of your body, like as you're going through your day, right? So um, they developed in the first forms of life, the very single-celled organisms that first came to life. Um, and it was important for them because they needed to know, like when the sun was up, they didn't want to do cell replication because that's you have a danger of mutating the DNA when you have
Yeah.
UV light. So they had to kind of figure out, okay, when it's light, we don't want to do cell division, but we do want to come up to the surface and do photosynthesis. So
Hmm.
when it's light, we need to do photosynthesis. Now, when it's darker, we can go down and get nutrients, and we can also do our cell division down there. Um, but then we know when the sun's going to come up, the cells knew, and so they would start traveling back up to the surface, so they could repeat their day. And so there's circadian rhythms are in every single organism, and what it helps these organisms do is time all of the functions of their bodies to the cycle of the day.
Yeah.
And so um, when we were hunter gatherers, we would wake up in the morning and we'd have bright sunlight. And we would be outside, we would not be in the shelter of our homes. And so we would get bright light in the morning. And then at night when the sun went down, we wouldn't have any light except for
Yeah.
firelight and maybe moonlight. And
Right.
so your circadian rhythms get reset every day when you have bright light in the morning. And then because when the sun goes down, you don't have any light. Now, your hormone production is like, okay, it's time for sleep. I'm going to start making melatonin.
Hmm.
And so then a few hours after bedtime, you get sleepy. And when we were hunter gatherers, when we were tired, we would go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't stay up scrolling our phones or binge watching television shows. We'd actually listen to our bodies and sleep.
Yeah.
And then when they would wake up in the morning, probably a little before sunrise, they would always, go to sleep about the same time every night, wake up with the sun, get bright sunlight in the morning, and now that would reset their circadian rhythm. So their
Right.
digestion, their hormone productions, that all of these things that kind of have cycles throughout the day are all aligned and in sync with the day. And
Right.
so think about it now. When we wake up, we get a fraction of the light. We don't go outside, so we have a fraction of the light that here's the sunlight, and we're down here. And then
Yeah.
when the sun goes down, oh, we still have the same amount of light because we're in our our lit homes and temperature controlled homes, and so our bodies don't know if we're coming or going most
Right.
of the time. And so it's not necessarily like the length of sleep, because hunter-gatherer societies that survived into modern times and their sleep was actually studied, they didn't sleep 8, 9 hours a day. They slept very similar amounts of time, like seven, between 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on the time of year and things like
Right.
that. But what was different about them is they were so um, just in tune with the rhythms of the day and their body rhythms that follow the rhythms of the day, that they didn't even have a word for insomnia. They
Hmm.
didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
So yes, getting enough sleep is really important, but also being able to have your circadian rhythms in sync with the day is really important too. So getting bright sunlight in the morning, decreasing the light at night. And blue
Yeah.
light is so important because this is a really cool fact. Blue light kind of is a thing that triggers circadian rhythms to reset or not reset, because blue light is the wavelength of light that penetrated the oceans. So the
Mm.
first cells, became really, really sensitive to blue light. And that's
Yeah.
why we're sensitive to blue light now. So there are things that we can do that hunter gatherers did to make our sleep quality better, for sure.
What are some of the ways that we could actually maybe improve our insomnia? Because if you think about it, like you mentioned, they didn't have insomnia back then, but nowadays there are so many people that suffer from insomnia and have trouble sleeping. And what do you think some of the reasons are because of that? And why what are some of the things you think we can do to help it?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, resetting and keeping our circadian rhythms kind of timed with the day is important. So bright sunlight in the morning and decreasing light at night.
Hmm.
That's probably one of the main ways we can get really in sync with our
Yeah.
circadian rhythms. Um, and I also think people don't move; they don't move their bodies.
Right.
So um, you know, we used to spend our entire days moving. We sat, we walked, we ran, we hunted, we climbed, we squatted, we built things, we harvested things. We moved our bodies throughout the day. And so if we sit in a chair for 8 hours a day, our bodies, still kind of, we need that movement. And so at
Yeah.
night, we're like, we can't sleep. But then also, I think there's so much stress in our lives that I think the stress fight or flight response makes it
Yeah.
really hard for us to sleep.
Hmm.
And our minds just cycling over and over and over about the future, what we're worried about. Um, I always think about the past, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, why did I do that? Or, I feel like since we're not taking care of our bodies in the present moment, and we're not living in the present moment, that we're we have insomnia for so many different reasons.
Right. Right. That's so true. That's so true. I think people have to really work on that because people take so many different supplements and it's really, you could go to the root cause and you can fix it naturally.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to fix it naturally. And, and there are many ways, like, even people wear a mask sometimes over their eyes to get less
Mm-hmm.
sunlight, so,
Mm-hmm.
the sunlight doesn't affect them in any way. Maybe if it seeps through a window and it might, hit the room where you're sleeping in, just to keep that darkness and to, be able to relax a little more when they're
Mm-hmm.
sleeping and to try to relax. And maybe, I was thinking, there used to be yoga poses that I used to do at night that actually helped with
Oh.
relaxing and helping with sleep. And they would actually have certain poses in the morning when you wake up to energize you and to give you that momentum to like want to begin the day.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that, I think personally, could be options also. But you
Yeah,
also
most
mentioned,
definitely.
you mentioned that work plays a big role too, and
Mhm.
in our health and in our mental health and our physical health. And maybe can you go a little deeper on how it plays such a role? Why it's so
Sure. Yeah.
important?
Well, I mean, I think people should know that like the 40-hour work week is kind of just this arbitrary number that was, when you had the Industrial Revolution, it's like, okay, well, if you work 40 hours a week, it won't kill you, but you're as productive as you can. I mean, it's kind of this arbitrary thing.
Yeah,
And when people look back to our ancestors, they have this perception that life was so brutal and hard, and we just struggled and strived and worked all the time. And really, even the hunter-gatherer societies that survived into modern day, who are now arguably pushed into the worst, most inhabitable habitats, because it's what, other people didn't want this land because, there it's the Arctic or the desert, or, even the people who have been, displaced and but still live their hunter-gatherer lifestyle, they work a lot less than we
yeah,
do. Um, and they spend a lot of their time enjoying life. They know what's important, connection,
yeah,
community. You know, when we were evolving and we were hunter gatherers, those things were required for survival. We needed other people for survival,
yes,
whereas we don't right now. So they took the time for at night. They gathered together and told stories, and they sang and they danced, and so they left a lot of time in their day to do all of these things, and not
yeah,
necessarily like purposefully, but because they had very small needs. Their needs were easily met by maybe a couple hours of work a day, maybe 15 to 20 hours of work a week at the most, to meet their needs. And then when their needs were met, they stopped working.
hmm,
So they really lived in the present moment. That hunter gatherers had this thing called um, immediate return economy, which
right,
means when they go out and hunt or gather, they bring it back and they eat it right away.
hmm,
So they're meeting their needs, and they're not thinking about the future. They view time as very circular and cyclical, and so they very much live in the present moment. So fast forward to the agricultural revolution, and now we start having a delayed return economy, which means we plant the seeds now,
yeah,
and we have to wait 9 months or whatever to harvest. So
yeah,
now we become very future oriented. We have to worry about, what's going to happen to these crops. How do I fix them? How do, we started doing this backbreaking labor to ensure that we had enough food.
yeah,
Um, and so I think that kind of changed our mindset a little bit. We no longer lived in the present moment, meeting our present needs. We're like, okay, what's going to happen in the future? And so I think that mindset is really something that we can actually cultivate we can cultivate living more in the present moment and
yeah,
meeting our needs. Also, I think, a hunter gatherer group would have fewer possessions than one early agricultural farmer.
right,
And because they didn't really take stock, they didn't need a lot of possessions. The accumulation of wealth, the accumulation of stuff meant nothing to them.
yeah,
Whereas now, we have to keep up with the Joneses. We're told like, this is going to make you feel better and this is going to make you feel better. So we have all this stuff, and so we have to work really hard to buy all this stuff, and then we have to work really hard to maintain this stuff, and then we have to work really hard to store this stuff, because even though houses are getting bigger and fewer people are living in these houses than they used to be, we still need to have external storage units to keep all of our stuff, and so we're paying more money for that too.
yeah,
So I also think living a more simple life, living with less, will also, you'll be able to work less if you have fewer needs. And really, we have very basic needs. Um, and for some reason, because we're not really meeting these basic needs, we feel like we have to fill that that void, and we think that filling that void with stuff will
mhm.
actually meet those needs, and they never do.
No, they never do. It's not what you have. It's how you feel inside,
Mhm.
emotionally, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the life you live and the surroundings where you live. They play a big, that emotional factor, that mental factor. plays a big role on how you feel as a person. Because you could have the biggest house, you could have a, you know, three, four, or five cars, or you could have a whole storage unit of cars. But
Hmm.
all these things will never bring you happiness. You're gonna be
Hmm.
if you're not happy as a person, you'll never feel happy unless you change it, you know.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
you know, I think people have to realize that. I think it's, you know, it's more of a power thing. We talked about that, the power, the money, the greed. You know, there's so many people that are wrapped in that and they see it on the internet, and a lot of
Hmm.
stuff is even totally fake, you know. You know, people always present themselves to have more than what they actually do. But a lot of
Hmm.
people don't realize that, you know.
Yep.
And it's not about what you have. It's not about what you know, want. It's about being happy in the present moment and your surroundings. How do you feel about yourself as a
Hmm.
person? Do you, you know, have gratitude for the people around you, and just have gratitude for nature? You know, I always say
Oh, yeah.
be happy that you know, you have the ability to go outside and take a breath, you know, that you can enjoy the grass and the trees and the flowers around you, you know, and many people forget about those little things, but if they didn't have them, you
Hmm.
know, they would miss them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, um, keeping up with the Joneses, and, nobody on their deathbed ever says, I wish I had more stuff.
Yeah.
They always say, I wish I'd spent more time with the people I love. I wish I'd had more experiences. Um, so it's almost like this lifestyle that we're living right now is kind of a facade. And I think this lifestyle is trying to make up for the fact that we don't take care of our bodies, and we don't have connections with people like we used to. The next book in the series is going to talk a lot about social groups, and why we evolved to be in social groups, and why, even though we might not need a group of people around us to survive
Hmm.
anymore, our bodies don't know that. you
Yeah.
know I mean, we might intellectually know, well, I'm totally and completely self-sufficient. I never
Mhm.
even have to leave my house. I never have to see another person. But that really takes its toll on our bodies as well, because our bodies evolved in this situation where we needed other people.
Yeah.
And so I feel like and this next book will talk about it too. Like, we are kind of, we're driving ourselves into thinking that this being an individual, individualism, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you don't need anyone else, you don't ask for help. This is kind of becoming ingrained in our culture.
Yeah.
And there's this loneliness epidemic. And um, so I really do think, like, a lot of the work habits that we have now, and our addiction to stuff, is actually trying to make up for the fact that we don't have these connections that we used to have.
Yeah.
Even as 100 years ago, I think we had more connections than we did today.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so it's not, this is a very recent thing that's happened, um, that has caused us to compensate in other ways that aren't necessarily fulfilling that need.
Yeah. Even less than 100 years ago, I remember, like, if you went to these, you know, these countries and they had small islands where, you know, broken off of the main countries, like, you know, everybody knew everybody. You go to
Hmm.
small towns, everybody knew everybody. You know,
Hmm.
it was like it was a community. You know,
Hmm.
people got involved in other people's lives. People were communicating, people were having fun, like you mentioned, laughing and singing and doing things together. And now nobody wants to talk to anybody. People are so
Hmm.
involved in their technologies. They are so afraid to reach out and to let their walls down for whatever reason.
Hmm.
That community is slowly deteriorating, and it's not the way it used
Totally.
to be. And, you know, if you don't have community, if you don't have friends, if you don't have people around you, you know, that sense of loneliness creeps in, and that sense of loneliness brings depression, and
Hmm.
depression could lead to other things, and it also leads to mental health issues, and it also
Hmm.
leads to physical health, you know. And
Hmm.
even, you know, when people feel lonely, suicide rates, you know, are contributed to
Hmm.
that also. So, you know, loneliness is not a good thing. You know, people are meant to be around other people, like you mentioned. It's
Hmm.
very important to have that sense of community, friendship, bonding. You know, that's how
Most
we were,
definitely.
yeah, that's how we were brought up, you know, as humans to be.
Mhm. Well, and I think, like I said, a lot of the things that we're trying to replace that with, we either replace it with food or technology or, you know, shopping or things like that. Um, what's so amazing and what was so interesting is that all of these things are intertwined. Our
Yeah.
sleep habits are intertwined with our nutrition habits, and what we eat affects our sleep, and how we sleep affects our work, and how stressed we are at work affects our sleep. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? All of these things are so interconnected. Um, it's really complex, and it can often be a little bit overwhelming to think of all of this stuff at once.
Yeah.
I actually got really overwhelmed when I was researching it, because it was like I just started learning all of the things that we're not doing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how do I even? I felt so overwhelmed. I felt like I didn't know where to start. Um, and so this is something I also wanted to mention, is that it is overwhelming. That the thought of trying to take control of our health and our wellness is an overwhelming thought.
Yeah.
But just taking little small steps, the ones that seem the easiest, the ones that most resonate with you,
Yes.
just taking one step and thinking of it as a practice, just like a meditation practice.
Yes.
um you're not going to do it, you're not going to be perfect, you're going to fall off the wagon, but you just keep coming back to it and coming back to it, and once you have that one new habit, you start to feel a little like incrementally better.
Yeah.
And because you feel incrementally better, like I think I can cook more often. I'm
Yeah.
not so tired after work anymore, so I think I'm going
Yeah.
to cook. So then you're actually starting to change your diet a little bit. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you start changing your diet, you're like, you know what, I want to go work out, because
Yeah.
like my body feels good. I'm giving my body what it needs, and so my body's telling me, you need to move, you need to move. So like, it turns out like you just start really small, and it becomes this big, um, you know, freight train
Yeah.
eventually of health and wellness. And so I don't want people to get discouraged or feel that it's too tough to start. Um,
Right.
so so although we've talked about a lot of things that are quote unquote wrong with how we're living now, it just takes changes in our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to change huge parts of ourselves. We just have to make these tiny little behavioral changes.
Yes.
So I think that's important for people to know.
Definitely. Now, if you had to take today's conversation and you wanted to really emphasize on some important factors, what are some of the things you'd like to emphasize to the listeners today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want people to know that if they're struggling, and especially if they're struggling with that self-love, self-acceptance, they think that they're failures or that it's all their fault, that it's not. um, they're not alone. And it's the fact that the way that our environments are compelling us to live is messing us up. It's not our fault.
Yes.
However, it is our responsibility, because as we talked about before, I don't know if we've talked about it on air or before, but it's not going to come from above,
Yes.
because the structures that are above us are really bogged down in money making and things
Yes.
like that. So it's going to come from the grassroots. It's going to come from us. And so it's our responsibility, but it also, in order to improve our health, we need to surround ourselves with community, and we need to surround ourselves with like-minded people, and all of these things make it easier to make those little small steps.
Mhm.
So hopefully, if people can understand and be educated about how we evolved and what actually our bodies need,
Yes.
then we can bring those things back into the future, into the modern day, and be able to like have the best of both worlds, have our health, have our well-being, but then also enjoy living in this modern world, which is amazing.
Yes. 100%. Those are really good takeaways. Now, if you can you just tell everybody a little bit about the book and where they can find the book again?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's called On the Origin of Being. It is on anywhere you can, online retailers like Amazon or Barnes and Noble. It's an ebook as well. So if you have a Kindle or something like that, we have our website, www.ontheoriginofbeing.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there. There's links to our social media. I'm on Instagram a lot. So if you want to follow us there. Um, yeah, and I think it's just a great thing to share, with the people that you love. Um, if it speaks to you and you can start making changes, hopefully, something like this can start a trend of
Yes,
health.
definitely. Definitely. And it's so important that people realize everything that you said today because it's, we just need to make little tweaks and those little tweaks can be huge changes in our lives for the better.
Mhm.
Now, do you plan in the future of maybe doing any type of master classes or anything, or have you thought about that yet, or if it's still in the works?
So we're still working on the book series, getting the book
Hmm.
series out. Hopefully the book two will come out next fall.
Okay.
But we are gonna like make some handbooks and some things that are more, you know, day to day accessible, not to like reading a whole book, but maybe some handbooks like that.
I like
My
that.
co-author Luke is actually he's launching or has just launched a food company that takes all the research that he did on nutrition and what our bodies actually need, and it's called Sapient Stews.
Oh,
And
nice.
so these are frozen stews, so these are really like convenience food that aren't convenience food.
Hmm.
It has, you know, all these whole food ingredients, and um, I think that they're really, really good.
Yeah.
So that, you know, look into that if you want to try to find some healthy, you know, convenient food options. But yeah, we're just still kind of we're at the beginning. We're trying to see where this goes.
Yeah.
And but yeah, keep on the lookout for us.
Oh, I love it.
I don't know what we're going to be doing. It's been a roller coaster, so we're just, you know, I'm going with the flow. That's for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, oh my God, this has been amazing, Jenny. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoy this conversation. I think it's a really important conversation that really needs to be addressed to people. They have to understand that it's all about the root cause and really, making little tweaks to it could alter so many things in our lives. And you made that very clear and you showed, some of the different components and categories that we should focus on to improve our lives dramatically. And so I want to thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing your knowledge and your time. This has been an amazing journey with you. This conversation has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it too.
You have a great day.
You too.
Bye bye.